As a GP now, the priorities are keeping people out of hospital, and to get that, you need to deal with obesity, you need to deal with the mental health, because that's another way people get admitted. Inequalities, it seems to be the more people in deprived areas who are getting much more of the health problems than people in the affluent areas. So we've got to try and even that out. And then also, obviously, the physical activity and making sure that we can prevent diabetes. So there's a kind of array of things, but actually from a cost point of view, and that's where obviously the budgets are really, really tight, it's trying to keep people at home and well. And CCGs initially, because they're GPs, we were dealing with disease. Now it's not just public health who are dealing with prevention, but it's actually the CCGs. Physical activity is good, but you're not going to get CCGs to give everything and all their money to try and get people more active. What you have to do is recognise where the problems are for that CCG. Sometimes you find there's a brick wall because the top people and the commissioners in the CCG aren't interested. You know, however much persuasion, however nice you are, however many solutions you can provide, they're just not interested. In which case you find a friend who may be lower down the ranks, or even just a GP who you know does a school run, or anyone who can help you get in to that area, because it's not everybody who understands this problem and the solution of physical activity in sport, but there are people in every CCG, I can guarantee, who do get it, and it's trying to find those to build up, and therefore it's very much a kind of cooperative way of going forward. Might be worth mentioning about the health and wellbeing boards. So they're set up to try and look at the overview of health for a whole area, for a town or city. And they're composed of not just public health, which is obviously part of the local authority, and the CCG, which is where the GPs are, but it actually deals with all the community and the police and transport and green and nature and parks and all those, and urban planning. They're all put together because that's where health is. If one can table something for the Health and Wellbeing Board, but have it sponsored by the CCG or by one of those groups, then that obviously adds huge credibility, and it means you can start to build up something which is much more coordinated and much more integrated into the well-being of a town, rather than an add-on, which is really where we don't want sport and physical activity to be. It should be part of the whole infrastructure of health, and it's almost like community cohesion, it's volunteering, it's all that area as well which gets delivered. You come to the critical point of actually you got face-to-face with your commissioner and you're sitting there and they say, well, tell me why I should be investing in sport and physical activity. And there are two parts to that question which you need to answer. First of all is, what is the evidence about sport and physical activity? You don't want to go on over and over and over all the evidence about physical activity and health. Most people will have got that. But there are a few things I think we should be able to highlight, which they may not know. And then the second thing is, yes, okay, you've got the evidence. So what evidence is there that this intervention or that intervention actually makes any difference? Because I can spend loads of money, and for every pound I spend, I might get 10p back. Well, that's no good for me. But if you can tell me for every pound I spend, I can get £20 back, then I'm a little bit more interested. If you get a whole practice or a whole CCG population more active, you will have done more benefit than anything else you could possibly do to that whole community, much more than them losing weight. Physical activity addresses so many different issues, 23 long-term conditions it can deal with. And it's not just the prevention, but it's also the treatment. So CCG, and actually public health, or anyone who commissions, will run on three principles really. The first is clinical evidence. So there's no doubt you've got to make sure you've got your papers and you know what you're talking about and you've got that evidence base. The second thing is the reality of return on investment. So there should be the £1 spent, what do I get back in prevention, but also in extra health. But the third, it's often forgotten in this world of kind of cynicism and evidence and number crunching, is actually the emotion, is the heart, it's a story. So anything that you can do which actually promotes physical activity or sport, and you've got a story of one person whose life was transformed, whose diabetes was completely overturned, who managed to get their family engaged or brought people back together. Any of those stories have huge impact, particularly when they're wrapped around the clinical evidence and the ROIs, because it creates a humanity story. And basically, most GPs and most commissioners still are human beings, and they still want to feel they're doing the right thing.